Members content?
Agreed.
Okay. We now are in open public session, and I should inform members that anyone in the public gallery can use mobile devices through a Wi-Fi connection, although I would say that all devices should be muted at this point. Okay, so we're now on to the formal agenda. Item number 2 that I have on the agenda is apologies. Have we any apologies to report? None? Okay. Item number 3, in accordance with the rules of the Assembly, I am to remind all members that they should declare at this stage any relevant interests that may affect their work as members of the committee. So do any members have any interests at this stage that they feel they should declare? None? Okay. Excuse me. The rules governing the registration and declaration of interests are contained in the Code of Conduct, and further advice and guidance on these matters is available from the Clerk of Standards should any member need them in public. So I now hand over to our Clerk, who is going to brief us on the role of the Assembly and Executive Review Committee.
Yeah, I'm just going to take members through just the role and remit. There are some papers provided for members. There's a briefing note, pages 49 to 65. A copy of the previous committee's legacy report is at 66 to 81. And then there's a copy of the Fresh Start Agreement, at pages 82 to 148. Now, the Assembly and Executive Review Committee was formed through an amendment to Section 29 of the 98 Act. So standing orders shall make provision for establishing a committee to examine such matters relating to the functioning of the Assembly and the Executive Committee as may be specified in standing orders. It's made in Standing Order 59, which states the committee shall consider such matters relating to the operation of the provisions of Part 3 and 4 of the Northern Ireland Act 98 as enable it to make the report referred to in Section 29A3 of that Act. So, in the previous mandate, the ARC Committee had to undertake a review of Parts 3 and 4 of the 98 Act. It was done last year, I think it was last April, it was completed, so that section of ARC's remit has been completed. The second part then of the standing order, which is 59.3b, such other matters relating to the function of the Assembly or the Executive Committee as may be referred to it by the Assembly. So the other area of work that the committee can take work from is when an issue is referred to it by the Assembly. So essentially that's the part currently that the ARC has remit for, because Parts 3 and 4, the commitment was to report on that by April 2015. So that has been completed. The only section remaining is that issues referred to it by the Assembly. So in the previous mandate, the ARC Committee did a number of reviews relating to Parts 3 and 4, devolution of policing and justice, initial ministerial provision in relation to the Department of Justice, number of members of the Assembly, reduction in number of departments, a review of the hunt, a review of petitions concern, women in politics, and it also undertook scrutiny of the Assembly and Executive Reform Bill, which is the opposition bill. Now, the Committee on Procedures will be taking out a review of standing orders in relation to the opposition bill, so that's something that they are taking forward. So certainly for the immediate future, the Committee on Procedures will be focusing on putting standing orders in place in relation to the opposition. The previous committee had suggested some issues around the Fresh Start Agreement, looking at issues that were highlighted within the Fresh Start Agreement. And so there were some issues within the Fresh Start Agreement, such as the formation of a civic advisory panel that the previous committee thought may be something that this committee could look at. But again, it relies on it being referred to the committee by the Assembly, but that's not to say that the committee couldn't suggest areas of work and request that the Assembly push it on to the committee to work on. So that's basically the outline of the remit of the ARC at present. It's quite limited in that it can only work on issues that are referred to it by the Assembly, although it's worth noting in the previous mandate, the work on women in politics was something that the committee started, suggested on its own, so it was without a referral.
Okay. Well, do any members have any comments or questions I want to ask of the clerk at this point in relation to what's been said? Mr. Allister?
So what you're telling us, that since the committee has no own initiative powers, it really is a pretty neutered operation.
Well,
It can only do something if the Assembly asks us to do it. It can't of itself decide, here's an area which would be worth exploring, let's as any other committee would explore it.
in the previous mandate, it did initiate the work on women in politics without a referral. So it did set precedent that it could. Also in the previous mandate, they wrote to other parties requesting what work they think should be taken forward.
So it has own initiative powers, has it?
Not within statute.
Sorry, you confused me. Either it has or it hasn't.
I think it
Technically,
hasn't.
It hasn't.
I think it hasn't.
But it has used own initiative in the past.
So building on that precedent, can we do that again?
That actually brings me on to the next point, which was I think it's probably going to be to the committee's advantage that we write seeking a request for a meeting with the First Minister and the Deputy First Minister with regard to areas of work that they may wish us to have a look at. I think the clerk's description of the situation is accurate in that we don't have our own initiative.
This
powers.
committee surely is not just a put-all for the First Ministers.
Absolutely not. But I think given the nature of the powers that are presently constructed in the way that they are, it may be worth, in terms of issues maybe arising out of the Fresh Start or issues like that, speaking to OFM, DFM in terms of seeing what other work there is that we can take forward.
But on the basis of previous precedent, are we not capable of, on our own initiative of initiating some work?
In terms of my interpretation of the statute would be that we're not. I might be wrong on that.
What we did in the past.
And I think we were probably incorrect in so doing. But
Which
the
point
clerk
being
would be better. Clerk would be better to outline it than I.
The committee, the only thing that's left for the committee is issues referred to by the Assembly. That's not to say the committee couldn't make suggestions to the Assembly to request that it refer something to them. So there is an option for the committee to put forward some suggestions around, and the committee has previously written to all political parties and independents requesting views on what work they would like to see the Assembly and Executive Review Committee undertake.
But all that sounds to me like there's really no purpose in this committee once it's dealt with parts 3 and part 4, which was a statutory remit. And if it's going to exist only to deal with anything that might be referred to it by the Assembly, that really that could be done by an ad hoc committee rather than by a standing committee.
Pretty much the duty of the Assembly and Executive Review Committee in the previous mandate was to report parts 3 and 4. So the only remaining part is within standing orders, which states anything referred to it by the Assembly.
I feel like this committee's going to wallow wondering what it can do unless until we get some clarity or take some initiative ourselves.
Chairman,
Mr. Kennedy.
might be an idea to invite political parties, as done previously, and in conjunction as well as that, seek an early meeting with FM and DFM to see what I think there are clearly very useful issues to this committee could explore to the benefit of the Assembly, including perhaps the models of opposition. You know, it would seem to be an extension of the work that was previously done. So, you know, as a means of going forward, I think we should at least take a sounding from seek an early meeting with FMD, FM, and indeed seek suggestions or comments from all of the parties involved.
Are you making a proposal, Mr.
Yes.
Kennedy? Okay. Mr. Kennedy has made a proposal that we seek a meeting with the First Minister and the Deputy First Minister, and that we write, I presume, to the party leaders, seeking suggestions from them as to what areas of work they would like the committee to look at going forward. Are members content with that proposal?
Good.
Okay, thank you. We now need to go into closed session again for the next agenda item relates to legal advice.
This is the Northern Ireland Assembly.